To celebrate American Thanksgiving, I'm making these adorable 3D pumpkin sugar cookies and these beautiful watercolor stacked pumpkin sugar cookies, all without a cookie cutter. I'm Kat, owner of Charm and Chic Baking Company, and welcome to my channel. Use the designs linked to my shop to either print and laminate if you don't want to use the STL file to print your own 3D cookie cutters. If you have a good laminator, the designs won't peel off after cutting out. Now, this method is good for cutting out only a few cookies as it is a little time consuming, but it's also a great way to make custom cookie designs without having to buy or make another cookie cutter. If you don't have a 3D printer, you can take the STL file to your local library, which most probably it does have one, and you only pay for the filament used, which is about $2 to $3. Notice how the lamination doesn't peel off. Make a batch of sugar cookie dough with a link to my recipe and techniques in the description. Add a little shortening to the design so that it doesn't stick to the dough after tracing. Use a paring knife that's also greased, carefully cutting out around the design. Then carefully peel off. Add a little shortening to an offset spatula. Then lift the cutout cookie onto a baking sheet lined with parchment paper. Use your knife to smoothen out the edges. Don't worry if they're a little jaggedy at this point, as I'll show you a trick later on how to get the edges even smoother. Bake the cookies at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 minutes or until just slightly browned. If you want crisper cookies, bake an additional 1 to 2 minutes. In the meantime, make a batch of royal icing with a link to my recipe in the description. Your royal icing should look like this when done. Once the cookies are baked and completely cooled, you can smooth the edges with a grater on the finest setting. Don't use an emery board as that is for your nails only. Let's start decorating the 3D pumpkin cookies. I colored some icing with sunset orange mixed with a little ivory and add a little bit of water to make a medium consistency icing. The icing should fall into itself in 20 seconds or dissolve when shaken to be considered medium. Pour the icing into a disposable piping bag over a tall glass and squeeze to the bottom. I'm going to ice the back of the cookies as that's the flattest part. Cut a small hole off the tip of the icing bag and start by outlining the ovals first, then apply more pressure as you work your way in. Once the cookie is filled, use your scribe to smoothen out the icing and pop any bubbles. The reason why I use medium consistency icing is so that the outline and fill are the same and I don't have to make different textures. Also, medium icing dries faster and doesn't crate. Once the ovals are iced and dried, add a curved line with the same icing along the edges for a more 3D effect. You can clean up any extra icing with a wet paintbrush. To assemble the cookies, place 2 ovals side by side onto your serving plate, then add another oval in the middle, and then the stem in between. How cute are these? And the best part, they're very easy to eat. Next, we're going to make these beautiful watercolor stacked pumpkin cookies. Divide the icing into 3 bowls and color with sunset orange mixed with a little ivory, rose pink also mixed with a little ivory, and then ivory on its own. These icings are thick, so we need to thin them down a little bit to get medium consistency. I'm using a syringe to add the water, but you can also use a dropper or even a spoon. Add just a little bit at a time to get the right consistency. If you add too much water, simply add a little more powdered sugar. Then add your icings to disposable bags, squeezing the icing down, and cut a small hole from the tip, seam side up. You can see that the cookie didn't really spread. If you don't have a mini projector, you can freeball the lines for the pumpkins using an edible marker. These are your cookies, so be creative. Next, trace the lines with the coordinating colored icing using your scribe to fix or adjust the icing. I'm starting by outlining and filling in the edges first, then working inward section by section to create the 3D effect. Next, I'll completely fill in the bottom area before moving upwards, finishing with the top pumpkin. If you're decorating more than one cookie at a time, work in sections and let each area dry before moving on. Alternate between cookies, allowing one section to dry before returning to the first cookie. Pipe the stem with icing colored with cocoa powder, then allow it to dry completely before adding the watercolor effect. For this part, I added the same colors as for the icing in a little water. Then, with a paintbrush, brush into the crevices and along the edges of the pumpkins using paper towel to blot the excess color in between. Finally, I'm adding a little plain water to blend everything together. I know this may seem like a lot of work, but they're definitely an art form and your guests will definitely appreciate them. Remember, you can apply this method to any design to create your own custom cookies with no special equipment and just a little imagination. Thank you all for watching and wishing my American viewers a very happy Thanksgiving. Happy baking!